Ready?
Particularly what we just heard from the last witness, she was describing, she said that she saw the videotape, but didn't recall of Oscar Grant holding her left arm while she was trying to keep the floor coming in back against that wall.
Well, first off, my reaction to the testimony is her state of mind, obviously what she's testified to, but I don't believe that the tape itself confirms or comports with what her testimony is. And certainly in terms of the outrageousness of the chaotic situation that she's described, that's not on the tape. The one part that Mr. Raines did show, that really confirms that these four guys were there, but you don't see where she is being physically threatened. No one there makes any efforts to attack her. There's no clenched fist. There was discussion. There's no doubt about it. They were making statements to her, basically saying probably what they were saying because they did not think they were being properly arrested and are properly detained. But in terms of physicalness, in terms of physical aggressiveness, I believe that was a figment of her imagination in terms of what was happening to her, because it just doesn't comport. The one thing that is pretty clear is that Officer Peroni, and the testimony will come out more so, reacted to whatever was happening to her. And I think we've had some discussion about that on other occasions as to what that means. But certainly that's our perception. But I want to talk a little bit about what happened here today, because I think what happened today gives you a roadmap as to how this matter is going to end whenever it does end. First off, the defendant sought to get evidence in about some prior activity that Mr. Grant was involved in. The court correctly ruled that as far as that evidence, it was not admissible. It was inadmissible hearsay, and it does indicate that the case is going to be evaluated based upon what Officer Mehserle had in front of him and not what he did not know, and will not allow for a sort of character assassination to take place on events and evidence that we're unaware. That's extraordinarily important. Secondly, I think what the court decided, and it's also important, is that what the court basically says, the state of mind of Officer Mehserle, which is a central issue here in trying to reduce this case from a murder case, that evidence can only really come in if, in fact, Officer Mehserle, or former Officer Mehserle, testifies himself. You cannot seek to put into evidence through the back door, if you will, statements made about other people and then by other folks that he apparently has made, and then try to infer from that that is a state of mind as to what he intended to do. So in terms of the evidence, the defendant really is placed in a position where the evidence on the tape speaks for itself. I think the court is very clear that he does not have to be told what's on the tape. He can see for himself. And when you look at that particular tape, what you will see is that there was not a basis upon which to bring out a firearm, probably not even a basis to bring out a taser. And as a consequence of that, unless the defense can come forward with some evidence that negates or put forth a state of mind here that suggests that he was doing something other than pulling out his firearm, then it seems to me that the evidence is going to support a murder holding order. The other stuff, in terms of what his state of mind is, he will have to present that evidence at some later point, which he'll have to do that in the course of a trial. As it relates to the testimony we heard today, certainly from the first officer, I don't think that any of that testimony is particularly relevant on the question of what Mehserle did. There were some indications that he didn't make any statements after. The important part is, what did Mehserle do? The officer who testified earlier did not see anything about that. So in terms of negating what the elements are, he offered no testimony on that particular point. This particular officer so far has not offered any testimony as it relates to what Officer Mehserle did at the time the shooting took place. And so, notwithstanding anything that's happening, the point you have to look at is what, in fact, evidence has been introduced or will be introduced that goes to the state of mind of Officer Mehserle. And so all this testimony about how chaotic it was, it really doesn't disprove that Officer Mehserle's conduct at the time was consistent with what's on the tape, which I think on the face of it will demonstrate it's at least a murder case, and it will be up to him to come forward and put evidence in that suggests there's anything less than that.
So he's going to have to testify, basically, in the trial.
If he wants to get this case reduced, from a second-degree murder and have it where his state of mind is at issue to show that it was not malice, he is going to have to testify himself. Otherwise, the other statements that he has sought to introduce, as Mr. Raines has sought to introduce, those statements do not come in as exception to the hearsay rule. And so Mehserlr will need to testify to negate them. That will not happen in this case at this stage of the proceedings. I've never seen a case yet where a murder charge was at hand where the defendant testified himself. Unless there was a clear indication of self-defense, and that's not the case here.
What do you make of Officer Newton's testimony about the things that he did not put in his report in terms of the cell phone?
Well, I think what's critically important in there is that the statements that he made in his report were made at a time where it appears that he was trying to exaggerate the conduct of the men on the platform and somehow conform that the police officers had to act in the manner in which they did because of the outrageous nature of the conduct by the boys. But the truth of the matter is the conduct on the videotape is not supported by his testimony. So it's essentially an exaggeration effort at that time. Now, the reason why that's important is that his statement, his written statement, was made before he had an opportunity to see the videotape. And so he thought he was writing a statement that would help all the officers there to justify their particular conduct. But he was unaware that all the videotapes were there, and so the videotape testimony does not support his statements. It is not surprising that things that could be helpful in terms of could be helpful to the individual's boys or Mr. Grant is not included in the report. The report is only really designed to offer support for their particular position by showing how outrageous the conduct was.
Are you talking about Wolfenden's report, or is that?
Well, he asked me about Wolfenden.
I was actually asking about Newton.
Yeah.
Oh, Newton, I'm sorry.
But that was Wolfenden you were just talking
Okay,
about.
I was
So,
talking. In his report, he did not see anything. But the most important thing for me in terms of our evaluation, he did not see anything, and that he had a sketchy perspective on it. My point is that he claims he was too tired to write a complete report. Really, the question is that I would have probably thought should have been cleared up is, was there anything preventing you after you got arrested over the next day or two to write a report that more accurately reflects? That was not done. And so to the extent he remembered things as time went on, that I'm surprised that he did not include those in a report if he thought that they were critical. I would only say again that the videotape itself does not describe or comport with what he described as being a very chaotic situation. In fact, it was kind of troubling and surprising that he couldn't even, as we talked about Asante, that he never saw him, in fact, commit this particular offense of throwing the phone. So, but if you look at all that evidence, at the end of the day, it's not relevant on the question of what Officer Mehserlr did. And no testimony is consistent that's offered that negates what happened. To the extent that he talks about the event of chaos, that's not particularly relevant on the question of what happened. He did not see what happened.